Are you guys ready to jump into the deep? Because we have the one and only Alex Sabbag here, best-selling author of the book Soul Dive, My Journey into the Deep. Alex, welcome to the Big Idea to Bestseller podcast.
Thank you, Jake.
So I'm excited about this because you put a lot of heart and soul into this book, okay? Let's start from the beginning. Why did you decide to write a book? Why this book? Give us all the details.
Yeah, so I've had a book in me since my early 20s, and it started to just begin as this like really frivolous dating expose, dawn of online dating, going on, fabulous experiences and trips and whatever, living my wonderful life in Chicago. And I just never did it. Like my mom was like, you got to write this stuff down. And I never did it. And I didn't care enough. And in hindsight, I'm really grateful that I didn't, because it was entertaining, but it lacked depth. And once I, got older and went through what I went through, which is the 2x4 moment, which we'll talk about, that really gave me the anchor and the slap upside the head to make me question, who am I? What am I doing here? And what's my purpose? And so that was kind of the dawn of this book, right? Being my journey into the deep, meaning my life was one way. And on the morning of my 33rd birthday, everything flipped upside down when my fiance was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer.
Yeah. Let's talk about this 2x4 moment. It's a big moment for you. Shifted a lot of things. So walk everyone through what that was and what happened as a result.
Yeah. So I had been in Europe for 10 days with my best friend from college as kind of the pre-celebration to my birthday. I was living with my boyfriend. We'd been together for about 9 months. From the very beginning, he was my big love. I mean, 2 weeks in, he asked me what kind of diamonds I liked, as in like shape and whatever. And I was like, I don't know what they're called. So I said big ones. And we were on, like, there was no question, like he was it. And as I was boarding the flight from Barcelona, I got a message from him that he was going to the ER. He had headaches and blurry vision, and his coworkers were like, enough, you're going in. And so the 9-hour flight, I was like, on top of it, and was going to meet him there. And he's like, no, just go home. And so I did. And he actually came home. They misread his CT scan, and they sent him home with a migraine cocktail and said, sleep well and let us know if anything else comes up. The next morning, which was my 33rd birthday, we're sitting on the roof of Soho House, having a cappuccino and a frosé and like getting into the weekend. I'm a big birthday person. I was, before, and now it's even more amplified. And he got a call from the Northwestern ER saying he has to come in for an emergency brain MRI. And that call changed the trajectory of his life, of my life, of our life together. So we went back in, and he was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. And so from that morning, I went from his girlfriend to that afternoon, his caretaker, to the next day, his fiance. And he kind of had his own trajectory too. And as much as it's about that moment being like the thing that shifted everything, it's really more about the before and after. Like, we have a million moments like that in our life. Like, we're not absolved from anything. Nobody's immune to abrupt endings or things we can't anticipate, the loss of a job, a divorce, even a bad breakup. And it's really who we are before and how we choose to move through that experience and come out on the other side after.
How do you feel that as you were writing this book, because writing a book can become a very emotional process because it can take you back to certain memories, time periods in your life. It can trigger different thoughts, different feelings, different emotions. It can be healing in some ways. How was the experience for you as you were writing the book and going through all of the time with him and with dating and everything that you put into this book and your personal reflection? How was that for you from an emotional standpoint?
So I would say writing it was easy. This is all, I didn't have to do any research. I lived it. So I already had the data collected. I just needed to articulate it, which happens to be my God-given talent. So that wasn't the challenge. The editing part is hard because I wrote it and I'm like, all right, I'm done. Look at me. I put it out there. I sent the message in the bottle, and then everyone's like, no, now you got to go back. And now you got to go back again. And now you got to go back again. I'm like, oh my God, like, let me off the hook here. And so what happens, when we go through trauma, it gets in our body. When we go through any experience, our tissues start to remember it. And as you know, I'm a yoga teacher. I own a yoga studio. I'm really, really into subtle body stuff. And so the initial moments can show up really, really big. Like we can feel those in our heart and our gut. I mean, we have a physical response to these life experiences, but the memories and the emotions that we carry with the experience also come back in the body or re-aggravate in our tissues. And it can be good or bad, right? Excitement is still an emotion we physically feel in the body. And what was happening for me is like feelings of grief, of loss, of sorrow, of, I mean, even, and then on the high end, like I was like, oh my God, why am I not in Europe right now? Because that's like where some of my best memories were made. And so it was really, you know, looking back on this process, but also looking back pre 2x4 moment, it's all about having a practice. And whether that practice for you is daily yoga or meditation or a walk or easy stretching or whatever it is, you need to move things through your body so that they don't stay stuck. There's a great book called The Body Keeps the Score, which is a really, really kind of clinical explanation of how the body hangs on to everything we experience. But really, it was the editing process that kept putting me back through the ringer. And then once the book was done, which it's here and it's beautiful, and it starts to get in hands, like I say all of these, I call them poetic wisdom drops, and they're in my email newsletters as well. I say all these like big things, wonderful things, and I have to look at myself in the mirror and be like, now you got to go walk that talk. Because if you don't, then I'm just happy horseshit like everybody else. Little plug for chapter 8. So I would say during the process, really, it was editing. And then now it's like every day I'm just challenged to like keep showing up and keep like living the truth that I put in the pages.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When you talk about this, right, you talk about everything moves through the body, and you have, you know, like you mentioned, a yoga studio, you teach yoga, and this is a big part of it. How much of your book process, your life process is around trusting the divine, trusting your intuition, trusting your gut, versus focusing on the specific tactical need to have strategic moments?
I would say my younger self was very much like, this is what should be true. I should be married. I should have this. I should have that because I was a certain age or I lived in a certain place. And it was all very, very black and white, like in the physical, you know, 3D realm, if you will. And the older I got, the more I learned that is not truth. Like that's just not it, because it's not what is right now.
Hmm.
And I think we all have incredible intuition. I think women might be just like slightly more on that scale than the men, but it's still there. Um, and over time, we learn to trust because every time we don't, we have maybe a big or a small 2x4 moment. Like if you're not listening and you're going over here, but there's like, you know, the angels are saying, but wait, no, it's this way. And you ignore, it's bigger always, every time without fail. And so sometimes we don't even notice like the little slaps, like we have to wait until we're like completely slapped upside the head. And that's why I always go back to the process. The process keeps us clear, keeps us grounded, it keeps us focused and quiet so that we can actually hear the invitation that's like, oh, no,
Hmm.
no, this is the way. And by the way, we don't have to like that, any of it. Like the right way that we're supposed to be going, we might hate it, but we're required to go because it's for us. It's the path, it's the process. And then we trust because we trust when things show up and when things start. And it's a very, very hard concept to explain. It's like more lived. And I'm completely rooted by faith always. And I'm grateful I had two things pre-diagnosis for him. Number one, the regular yoga practice already existed. I already wanted to go to the studio. And so I kept waking up in the morning, A, out of survival, but B, to go there. But number two, I had faith. I was already praying. I already had a relationship with God, and it's essential. I mean, you even come over here on the other side and it's like, great, I've processed grief and this is all in the past and now I can go live my happy life. But that doesn't mean that stuff still doesn't show up and shake things up a little bit. And so those two things are really, really essential in my opinion, and very, very big themes in the book.
Yeah, well, you know, trusting your intuition is one of those things that, like, it is very hard to explain, and sometimes it's hard to recognize that feeling initially. How have you been able to know when it's your intuition, know when it's like that gut feeling, versus just, oh, you know what, maybe I should check this out, right? Because there's sometimes like little ideas, but they're not necessarily like your gut, but it which might be worth exploring. But then there's the other times where you're like, I know I'm kind of being pushed towards this, but I have resistance. How do you kind of navigate that in your life as you've gone through a lot of the work?
I mean, it's an ever evolving process. And I would be lying to you if I said I woke up and was like, oh, I just, I always know the right way to go. I mean, we have these little pings and we get curious about certain things because they somehow come into our orbit and we need to explore that. So sometimes we need to go down the wrong path and then like remind ourselves that the right one is truly right.
Mm.
I don't think there's really one way to always do it. I mean, I think if you, walk into a room and you feel something like, ooh, something feels weird, like, listen. I mean, you may not know what it is, or you may not know why, but like, just note it. It's worth noting. If you go to dinner with somebody, if you're on a date and you're like, I don't feel right. I mean, do you really want to go on another date? And then to
Yeah.
check yourself, is it me? Is it the person? And it's just like it's a whole thing. It's not black and white. And that's like one of the biggest takeaways is I tried to live a very black and white life, checking all these boxes that I thought had to be checked because I was at a certain place in time, in my life and in the world. And now I'm like, I don't even know where the checklist is, least of all what's on it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's fascinating. What would you say is one of the things on the checklist that you thought was super important and that you see society gravitating towards based on what we think we need to do versus allowing life to be lived truly?
I mean, the number one thing I was living for, I think since I was 5 and like playing with my mother's jewelry is to be married. Like I just
Mm.
was fixated. I was like, I want to be a wife. I want to be, a mom, like sure. Cause I thought it's not that I love children. I think I'll love mine, but I definitely don't like other people's, like a baby comes by and I'm like, oh, take it away.
Yeah, sure.
But it was always about being married. I lived my life to find him and to do it, to settle down. And that process is like ass backwards and sideways. It's just not how, I mean, like you would know you're actually getting married, and it's still not something that I've been able to check. And I don't even know if it was because of a societal pressure. I mean, I'm from Iowa, but I wasn't from like a super small town where everybody got married at 22. It was just something that I always wanted. I was an only child. I craved companionship and I saw my parents have this wonderful life together and I always wanted it. And so every date I was like, okay, well, I think he could be my husband if he has X, Y, and Z. And it's like, what? Like, I don't even like him. I don't think he's cute. why,
Yep.
why am I trying to put everybody into this box when like, there's only, a handful of people that would even be a good fit. I think that was one of the hardest lessons to learn too, because it wasn't so much that, I mean, yeah, I lost my person, which was devastating. And it was the closest I've come since to, I mean, being engaged is the closest I've come to owning the title of wife. But it was like I had a can of gasoline in one hand and a match in the other. And the diagnosis, yes, took him, but it took my future life. I mean, it took the house I thought we were going to live in and the children I thought we were going to have and the school system I thought we were going to be a part of. And like the routine I thought I would like embark upon, like, I owned the PR company at the time. Like I just had this whole vision and it went up in smoke and
Yeah.
it gradually had to burn down bit by bit, bit by bit. So I was just so attached to it. I tried to push everything toward it. And spoiler alert, like I wanted this book to end with that nauseating Instagram post of me and my beautiful husband and my new baby and like the beautiful home we have, somewhere. And I couldn't write the last chapter. I just like kept waiting. And I was like, I even went through a breakup like during the book process. And what did I think? Like someone was going to swoop in and it was going to be like it was with my fiance. We're 2 weeks in, we were just off. Like, I don't know what my expectations were, but eventually the team was like, you have to write the last chapter. I'm like, but it's not ready yet. Like there's no
Mm.
ring,
Yeah.
but the last chapter came together in this really, really beautiful way. In that the moment had to happen in order for the ending to be clear. And when you read it, when you get there in that part of the journey, it's all about the present and the moment and the intuitive knowing and the
Hmm.
feedback from somebody that was very close to me that just made it all come together. I mean, you want to talk about like intuition and knowing. The day after like this evening it happened. And by the way, nothing really like earth shattering happened. It was just a moment. I woke up and I had my journal on one side and my computer on the other. And it was either like handwriting or typing and my phone. And I just sat there and I was like, what am I supposed to do? I was traveling
Mm.
later that day. I had a couple hours and I got this ping and it said, check your bank account. And I'm like, okay. So I opened up my bank account and my business account had 4 nines in it. And I wish it was like millions, right? But it was like literally just all nines. Nines signify beginnings and endings. And I was like, oh,
Wow.
you want me to end it? okay. And I just opened my computer and 30 minutes later, it was done.
Wow.
It was like, just like that. And so I like to give examples of like intuitive pings coming in and like what the response is. But I just went, I mean, I just like started, it was like it was the most free form writing of the entire book process was the last chapter
Mm,
in real time. And we're talking 3 months ago, maybe
yeah,
4 months ago by the time this comes out,
sure, sure.
but really real time and not the way I anticipated and definitely not the way I wanted it. But now looking at it, even more beautiful than I could have imagined it.
Yeah, and I mean that's powerful stuff, right? When you think you want something a certain way, whether it's life, your book, your final chapter, whatever, and then you realize that what you end up doing was what you were supposed to do and how it was supposed to happen, right? And so when you finish your book, all right, and we got through all the production side of everything, and you're getting ready to release it. What was your reaction and your feeling when you held your book for the first time?
Well, it's documented on the internet. The only person I wanted to celebrate it with was him.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the book is it's powerful, and when you started talking about it, and there's a difference when you have an idea of a book. There's a difference of when you're writing the book. There's a difference of when you start to actually produce the book and you're like, okay, it's getting real. And there's that difference of like, I'm holding my book and other people are going to hold it too very soon.
Mm-hmm.
How did the energy shift for you, or how did what you thought was possible with the book start to shift once other people started to get their hands on the book?
A couple really big things have happened on the heels of it. I think number one, it became very, very clear to me that I will have life experiences that are meant to be shared. And I think
Mm,
this was happening early on in my life. I mean, very early on, like with very little awareness or none. And then in my 20s, I was like, not everybody gets 24 hours notice to go to Hawaii. I mean, even just like frivolous stuff like that. And as I got older and maybe more of the traumatic incidents that came forward or the things that aren't so pleasant that are just like, I just maybe give light references to in this book, but I'm going to go way deeper in the next one. It's like, there's a reason why I was asked to go through that. And
mm,
I think there's a really powerful message there where we're not given any more that we can handle. And I know that I don't like it. There's a lot of things I don't like.
sure.
But I don't sit here and say, why me? I say, how can I turn this around, story tell it in a way that it's going to be beneficial to the reader, to the person who then engages with it. And that's what's starting to happen. There's a lot of themes, there's a lot of messages, and there's a lot of takeaways in the book. And it's not for everybody, but there is something in there for everybody. And what happens in like, and it's not necessarily showing up in Amazon reviews, but it's showing up in my inbox and my text messages, like very, very specific life moments being shared. And I think one of the things that as humans, or anybody that's like in any type of like interpersonal relationship, business or otherwise, it's our jobs to kind of like disarm the other person, and make that space neutral and safe so that authenticity and truth can really like come forward. And I worked a lot on this because I think I don't think I necessarily like was activating those parts of me when I was younger. And yoga really taught me how to do that.
Mm,
And I think when we show up and we're able to like neutralize the scene and share first in our own like authentic truth and our voice, what comes back is like 10x. Like the things that I've learned and taken away just from people's comments and feedbacks have been the biggest gift. And it's one person at a time.
yep.
Like my expectations weren't on this book is going to drop and then all of a sudden Oprah's going to care, but it's like one by one, you make a difference in somebody's life and it spreads. I mean, I'm getting screenshots of like, well, now my aunt ordered it and my friend ordered it. And it's like, it's a very steady growth of the message. But in October last year, and I met you through my business coach, I was like living in this state of like massive anger. Like I was just
Mm,
pissed always. Like nothing was making me happy. I wasn't feeling any type of like contentment or joy. I was just like, I was annoyed. I was annoying to be around, I'm sure. And Danielle was like, all right, like we gotta shake this up. This is not who you are. And also doesn't look very good on you. And we really got to the bottom of it. And it wasn't like I was not speaking my truth because I wasn't starting the damn book. I mean, every single thing in my life was like pinging, write the book, write the book, write the book, write the book. I mean,
Mm,
energetically, physically, metaphorically, it didn't even matter. Everywhere I looked, it was like, write the book. And so I had to start. Like I had to
yeah.
literally just put all that resistance aside and start so that it could get out and do the things it's going to do. And then I can continue on, go deeper into the next.
Did you feel that? I want to talk about this, and then I want to talk about some of the launch things that you're doing and how you're taking this thing all around the country and eventually all around the world. What, when you mentioned that you had a lot of this anger and you were frustrated and all these signs were pointing right in the book, at what point did you start to feel a release of some of that anger? Was it the minute you made the decision to just honor the feeling that you had about writing the book, or was it once you had written a certain amount, or at what point in the process did you start to find yourself being released from some of that anger?
It was starting. It was actually starting to write. And I mean, I think we as humans experience this all the time. I know what I'm supposed to be doing, but I don't know where to start. And my
Yep.
answer to that is quite simple. It's like in the beginning, just show up and do it. It's taking a yoga class or whatever, like take one step in the direction of your purpose
Mm,
and things start to align. And it really was my purpose to share the story. I mean,
yeah.
all of it. It was like, it's a very, very no holds barred, expression of what's what.
Yeah.
And that was the calling. That was the invitation. Like, don't hold back. Tell them what's up. And I think in
Totally.
that process, like you gain a lot of respect and credibility so that you can go on and spread a bigger message.
Mm,
And the bigger message, this is not like a grief support group. This isn't about trauma and loss. I mean, there's that stuff in there, but it's really, I mean, if you take one major thing away, it's like Soul Dive is a movement. It means a lot of different things. For me, it was like coming completely out of the ring of my life to try to heal and be perfect coming back in because I wanted a big bow on my head so somebody would finally love me and marry me. That's what I thought. And that's totally crap. We
yeah.
don't have to do that. We don't have to be completely healed to be perfectly loved. And that's something I know now and live very much, in that truth. And it's very empowering once you get there. But Soul Dive is just taking a minute. It's showing up in any way, shape, or form you are to simply be, period.
Yep.
It's that permission. And we don't get that permission anywhere. We have
Mm,
to be a certain way in certain rooms. Otherwise we're judged or it's wrong or it's off or it's whatever. And it's like, wait a minute. We just need a few spaces to show up and exist in
yeah.
whatever way, shape, or form we are in the moment. And writing the book gave me days and days of those moments because sometimes it was
Yeah.
exciting to write about whatever content it was. And sometimes it was painstakingly traumatic. I
Yeah.
don't want to go back to that waiting room. I don't want to go back to that moment. I can feel it. I can feel the air. I know what I was wearing. I know everything. I could relive it 1,000 times. I'd like to be done reliving it.
Sure.
Move
Sure.
on. Um, yeah.
Okay. And so now that the book's going out, typically what happens when you release a book, and you kind of talked about this initially, when you release a book, you have your inner circle, right? It's like your bullseye, right? On the innermost circle, you have your inner circle of people who are going to support you no matter what, right? These are often your first buyers. These are the first people to hear about your book. These are your close friends and family who want to support you. Then you start to expand a little outwards. These are friends of friends. These are acquaintances, people that you're like, wait, I didn't even know you were following along this adventure. And now here you are reading my book and coming out and supporting it. And then you have like that outer ring, which is now your book's starting to make headway into people that you don't even know, right? And people are hearing about you and referring it and all these things. And so how are you, now that the book's out, how are you continuing to promote the book? And, I know you're doing a big book tour. So how are you continuing to get the word out there and continue to expand the reach of Soul Dive and build the movement on the back end of the book?
So this all started kind of back in April. It was coming to a close. And I was like, all right, well, I better figure out how I'm going to sell copies of it. And I did a really, really short stint in DC working for a senator of Georgia. And I always kind of had an interest in politics, but never pursued it. And I watched various political voices gain office just by it starts with one person. It's that one-to-one connection. And some of the biggest leaders, in politics have started their careers in living rooms, and a lot of living rooms in Des Moines, Iowa. Des Moines is like a very, Iowa itself is a battleground state. I'm from Iowa. And I was like, all right, I'm taking a page out of the political book and I'm going to go for living room parties. And maybe this is what other people do as well, but this is just sort of the genesis of where I was coming from with it. So the way that I made the ask to my network to do this for me was out of this concept of receiving. And when I went through this 2x4 moment, people came out of the woodwork to try to help. I mean, people are innately good, by the way. I mean, we're kind of reminded otherwise, like kind of every time we leave the house, but I do believe at the core, people are good. But the problem was I was not in a place to receive and I didn't know what the heck I needed. I mean, I needed a freaking lifeline. I needed a lot. I didn't need just dinner on Tuesday or somebody to drive him over there on Wednesday. I needed a life raft. And so I shut people out. I pushed it away. I didn't know how to receive, and I definitely didn't know how to show up and be happy for anybody in those moments. And there were friendships that were lost and relationships that suffered. And for good, bad, or indifferent, it's just where I was and what happened. And so when I started writing this email to put the ask out, it was under this whole concept of I couldn't receive anything from you then. Like if you were with me on this journey, thanks. And I fully just acknowledged I couldn't receive it, but that I can now. And here's exactly how you can help me. And here's exactly what I want. And here's what I'm asking of you. And here's what I'll do. And that had an overwhelmingly positive response. I wasn't just coming out and saying, throw me a party. I mean, that was essentially the ask, but I had ownership over something that like I had done in my past, which wasn't exactly wonderful.
Right.
Acknowledged the shift and told people exactly how they can help me. Because people do want to help you. I mean, I get asked a lot, like there's definitely been a lot of moments over time where somebody has said, oh, my friend's spouse or my this or my that, how do we help them? And it's like, you need to know what they need because then you can specifically meet that need by showing up, and if the person can't receive, then wait. There's probably nothing you can do or say to make it better. And so that was really my experience. And I sort of shifted that into making the ask. And so now there are these events coast to coast. The book has been to multiple countries already. It right away went to Turks and Caicos. It's been to Paris. It's been to London. It's been on a cruise. It's been to Italy. I mean, it's been everywhere. It's been first class, business class, whatever. It's like, it's really had some legs. Meanwhile, I haven't traveled, but that's going to change.
Yeah. So when you do this, okay, because we have people listening from all over, what are some of the cities that you have on the schedule? Where are some of the cities that you want to add to the schedule?
Yeah. So I live in Southern California. So obviously that's low hanging fruit. I can get anywhere and everywhere. I will be spending a week to 10 days in Chicago in July. I'll be in Northern Michigan. I'll be in Manhattan. I'll be in the Hamptons, various cities around the Midwest, Des Moines, obviously included, back to Chicago in the fall, and hopefully over to Europe in September or October. And I'm really hoping somebody's throwing a party over there because I'd like to write that whole experience off. So just
Yeah. Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's
yeah,
get Soul Dive International, get a
yeah.
living room party, get a book tour event out there. But Alex, this has been great. This whole experience has been filled with emotions, ups and downs, learning lessons, all types of things. But it's been amazing. And you've shared a lot of great tips and thoughts and just life lessons throughout this. So how can we, if we want to buy the book, if we want to support you, if we want to connect with you, if we want to host you in one of our cities, how do we get in touch with you and get follow along?
Yeah. So my website is soulfulalchemist.com and my Instagram is at Alex Sabbag. And so both of those are great resources to connect and share, send me your testimonials, offer to host a book party. Bigger than that, I am available for public speaking. And so any retreat or conference, whether it is, around these like soul diving moments or even entrepreneurial conversations, let me know what you're looking for and what you need. There's all info on how to book and outreach details through soulfulalchemist.com.
I love it. Nice and concise. We'll get that all linked up here. And thank you for coming on the show. I mean, this was great. It's fun. I know we had to reschedule a few times, but we did it, and it was amazing. So thank you for being here. And for everybody who just listened to this, here's my challenge to you. I want you to think of somebody in a city in Europe, and we're gonna meet Alex where she's at. Okay, so think if you know somebody that's in a city in Europe that would be open to hosting an incredible book tour event, reach out to Alex, let her know, and let's make her go international here. That's the name of the game. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you all on the next one.